Hey, my name is Rino from Hamilton. I play bass in Six of Swords, Phantom Lung, Born Without Hope, and Living Nightmare. My main influences growing up was my dad. My dad is a blues drummer, and he got me playing bass, and he had a huge record collection that I just would sit down with him, and he would show me stuff like Kiss and Black Sabbath and Motorhead. All right, what got me into metal? Like I was saying with my dad, he had like Ace of Spades on vinyl, so I immediately latched on to listen to Motorhead and Black Sabbath and Kiss and the Ramones, and that got me into really only liking like heavy guitar music. And then from there, it was the late '90s, and new metal was super popular, and I latched on to bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot, which led into me having an ear for death metal. I used to watch Much Loud and see videos from like Morbid Angel and Slayer and Bolt Thrower, and yeah, and that's how I got into like heavier music. Now, how I got into hardcore was a little bit different. I grew up in the punk scene in Newmarket, and I really only liked the heavier bands that would play, and there was a couple local hardcore bands that I couldn't tell you what their names were, but I knew that it was different than like the regular like Misfits cover bands and ska bands. My first concert was actually Backstreet Boys. My family, so my mom, my dad, and my sister were at Ontario Place, and the Backstreet Boys happened to be playing, so naturally we went, and I had the best time, and I still love them today. Now, as for like heavier music, I guess a couple years after that, my dad took me to go see Deep Purple, which was probably to this day one of like the best concerts I've ever seen. But if we're talking like heavier, like metal and hardcore and stuff, my first concert would have been Guar, and I remember might have been 14, 13 or 14, and my mom drove me, and she picked me up and was absolutely mortified because if you've ever seen a Guar concert, you know that you're covered in fake blood. But that didn't stop her from driving me to other concerts. Like a week after that, I went to go see Cryptopsy with Lord Worm on vocals, and that's probably when I started getting into death metal. All right, I'll give you my top three favorite shows. Number one would have been Terror playing the Funeral Home in Buffalo. If you've never been to this venue, it's like a shut down funeral home where the bands play in what would be like the visitation room thing, like 60 people capacity. But when Terror played there, there was at least like 300 people with like no air conditioning, no circulation, people stage diving everywhere, like people packed in the hallways, people outside moshing because there's just no room. It was fucking incredible. Number two on my list would have been another Buffalo show, but I saw Fall Out Boy play Take This to Your Grave front to back at Mohawk Place. It was like an unannounced show for Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die's birthday, and Four Year Strong opened. All right, and my third favorite show would have been a show that I played with Six of Swords. We opened for Crowbar at the Mod Club, and the cool thing about that show was when Crowbar played, Kirk went on stage wearing our shirt, and mid-set, like in between songs, ended up giving us a huge shout out. Said that we were like the best opening band that they had on the entire tour, and like for a band like that was pretty new, and like we had never really played any big shows like that. That meant a lot to us. That was really fucking cool. All right, so craziest thing that's ever happened to show. I must have been like 17 or 18, and I played bass in a band called With Blood. And we had a show with Lions and Ion Dissonance in Newmarket. And I was moshing for my friend's band, Every Step, Every Breath, before my band played. and I fell and broke my hand. And my options were either bail on the show and go get my hand looked at, or play the show, and I played the show. I grabbed some paper towel and some duct tape, and I wrapped up my hand the best I could, played my set, and then as soon as I finished playing, I left all my shit on stage, drove to the hospital, got a cast, and I came back to the show and managed to mosh for Lions and Ion Dissonance after. All right, I'll go through all the most of the bands I've been in my whole life. So, in high school, I was in like a couple of, I guess, cover bands, playing stuff like Weezer and Deftones and Korn. I couldn't remember for the life of me what the names of the bands were, but that's kind of how I started playing music. Then I got into a like beatdown hardcore band called With Blood that I just mentioned. From there, I was in a kind of like a grindcore, noisecore band called The Veil. From there, I was in a metalcore band called A Distance from Toronto. Then I had a bit of a gap in playing music to where I ended up joining Mad Trapper, another like grindcore band. At which point, so this is around 2013 when I joined Six of Swords, and I've been in Six of Swords for the last 9 years. And then in the last 6 months, I've ended up joining Phantom Lung, Living Nightmare, and Born Without Hope. All right, what do I like about being a musician? I mean, I've been a musician since I was like 12, so it's really all I've known. That's been like my hobby, pastime, passion, whatever you want to call it. I love jamming with different musicians, different styles of music. I've played with my dad's bands. He's been in blues bands and country bands, and just being creative and being able to like come up with something that no one's ever heard of before. But as for what I dislike about being in bands, you always have an idea that's never going to be received well by the other guys in your band, and it kind of sucks when you think of something that you think is the best, but then no one else in the band likes it, or 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 just even logistically of being in your 30s trying to get 4 or 5 guys in the same room once a week to jam is it gets really taxing to try and figure that out. My favorite food are burritos. I can and do eat burritos almost every day. I like Chipotle a lot, but any burrito is fine for me. I literally have one useless talent, and it's this.